Sports are filled with superstition, and racing is no exception. Though it's a cliche, the number 13 is still seen as bad luck. But for our hopefuls fighting for the title, it's going to be lucky number 13 this time around. Let's get ready for the PCA Sim Racing Series 13 Sport Class. You'll see it all live here on RaceSpotTV. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Justin Prince, along with behind the scenes, our director, Ramiro Cisneros. By the way, we're thrilled to have Princess Cruises as the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 13, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships, all sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. And PCA is also proud to announce they are celebrating their 70th anniversary in 2025. Here's to many more decades with North America's largest Porsche enthusiast group. And this group has quite the schedule lined up for this season here, Justin. We've got a whole bunch of classic tracks for them to race on.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to the middle portion season. That's going to be an interesting part when we get to February, March. We have that mix of some of the newer tracks like Portimao when it comes to iRacing, but you also have some of those classics like Silverstone, Road America when it comes to speed. And it's going to be a very fantastic finale by the time you get to Imola. That's going to be a good venue to close out the season. It's a good combination of tracks too, Joe, that'll really test the driver's skills, where it's not just about the draft tracks or the technical. You have to be able to be good at multiple types of circuits.
Indeed, and starting off with one of those draft tracks here at Daytona, traditional to start off the year of sports car racing here. So Porsche going to follow suit. They've got 3.5 miles to try and tackle, just a hair under 6 kilometers for a single lap with 12 turns. But the biggest thing about it, as you can see, is a large portion of the lap is spent on the oval. That is high banking around there. They're going to be in each other's slipstream for long periods of time. And they're going to find themselves having to try and use that to either catch up and pass their rivals or maybe even save fuel. Should be an interesting one to watch. That is for sure. As drivers are out in qualifying right now, and they get 3 laps to try and set their quickest time. Big thing compared to for what we saw in the pro and the club classes, Justin. Look at how foggy it is.
Yeah, that's going to really impact some of the visibility here tonight. Was just checking in terms of humidity. It's 100% in sim. That's why it's so foggy around this racetrack. So that's going to impact somewhat of that visibility. It is a cool night in the session itself, so there is a fair amount of grip. It just so happens to be going to be a little bit more difficult to see a little bit in front of you, just so to speak, because of that fog. I don't see it to be a major factor, but it just adds that extra eeriness, so to speak, to the backdrop, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely changed the look. We had beautiful sunsets in the first 2 races, and now suddenly we find ourselves kind of in no man's land out with not much to see outside of the track. Brian Stern here in the 666 car looks to be one of the few that have not set a lap yet. And he's coming around, hopefully, to what will be his first timed lap here, because he only has about 5 minutes left. And he puts down a 1:46.0. That's good enough for 13th. Well, there you go. If you believe in lucky number 13, that's a good spot for him to start as we check in with Carlos Lopez, who's a little bit farther up. He's within the top 10 right now, which, as we tend to expect in this series, pretty close racing out here. Top 9 separated by 0.6 of a second currently, Justin.
Fairly tightly compact when it comes to qualifying. Charlie, though, with a good qualifying run up by a few tenths. It's going to be interesting, though, once the race gets going, how the packs fare out, because I know it's a drafting track when it comes to Daytona, but we've seen in these races, whether it's the sprint, whether it's an endurance, over time, those packs splinter from the whole field together down to packs of 3 to 5 cars, even less than that sometimes. And when that splintering happens, usually if you want to be in that conversation to be on the podium, you want to be a part of those first top 5, 8, or 10 cars, essentially. It's hard to come from the back to front, even at a track like Daytona, because there's just so many cars you have to pass, and there's with just so little time on the race clock that you have to be able to get yourself into the lead pack. You have to be able to capitalize with track position early.
Yeah, we have to remember it is only a 60-minute race here, so you can't wait too long. You have to use that leapfrog to draft past people and work your way up the order. We did see a few big climbers in the first two races, so it is possible, but you can't count on it. Like you said, sometimes you can just get stuck passing and be reamed past by those around you, as we watch Jeremy Main here in the 555 machine. One of the more important corners here off of turn 6 and onto the banking. Here you are on the throttle for a long, long time, and he will need every ounce of speed he can get. This is his last flying lap, it looks like. Best so far, a 45.7, good enough for 17th place.
And you mentioned that separation at one point was about 0.6 or so in the early portion of the session. The separation between starting in the top 5 and being all the way back in 20th is now about half a second. That's how on point these drivers have been when it comes to the session here. And it just kind of showcases you have to have that feel of the racetrack. You have to have that preparation down just to get that line right. If you clip that apron a little bit, if you have a bad apex, it could be a massively costly experience. And we're seeing that for some of these drivers where they're having to scratch and claw just to be able to get themselves up the pylon right now and end their sessions.
Speaking of jumping up the pylon, Gerbino did not have a lap count until that third try. That was critical, and it put him in 11th. So, yeah, that would have been disastrous if that last one got deleted. Elizondo as well had a great improvement on his final lap. He jumped up to the front row as we watch Bulkley come to a halt and wrap his up. Now, one thing to remember is this is solo qualifying, and what that means is drivers are not allowed to complete hot laps. Once the clock hits 0, you see in the upper left-hand corner, that means that qualifying is over. Mike Sachs here will cross the line, but it looks so. No, he doesn't improve. He goes up to 8th, actually, so that was a good jump from him. Last lap was down to a 45.4. And just the last couple drivers able to get across the line. About a minute left as Karachai will also come to a halt. And wow, great qualifying for him, up to 4th position in that number 78. And it is very, very tight from 2nd down to what looks like about 9th. I think there's somewhere in the realm of about 0.2 of a second from 2nd to 9th. Woo.
Like I said, a lot of these drivers definitely getting the practice down to be able to get themselves that close on the pylon. And better yet, that's going to really emphasize how tricky it's going to be potentially to separate yourself in the field tonight in terms of being able to establish a presence in the pack. It's going to, of course, still splinter over time, but it's just that early portion. It's going to be ever more difficult, potentially, just to be able to find your way in that leapfrog, I think. A lot of these drivers just making sure they get that preparation in with their 4th laps on screen, but the race itself, I think, is going to be a fun one tonight to see how these drivers really solidify, how they establish themselves on speed in racing conditions, and who really gets the strategy right over the course of an hour.
Qualifying now officially ends. All drivers managed to get a lap time in. Field separated by about 2.2 seconds from 1st down to 33rd. Not too shabby from everybody. That means it's time to go through our starting grid for this series. Now, they do have a warm-up, so don't worry. We got a little bit of time before we get there. So let's take our time taking a look at Charlie Ferrer on the pole position. Russell Elizondo, as I said, late in the qualifying, moving up to the front row. Aaron Sunday returns to try and see if he can make a title as he starts from 3rd. Mehmet Karachai out there starting from 4th. Gilles Estupinian will be P5, and Olin Murphy will start in the 6th spot. Then on our next slide, Jim Walsh hops from his real car, racing in the Porsche Sprint Challenge, to racing here in the PCA, starting from 7th. Mike Sachs will be P8. Carlos Lopez starts in the 9th position. Rounding out the top 10, it'll be Matt Owens. Jeremy Hall is then on the next row of row 6. To his outside, it'll be Jake Gerbino in 12th. Justin.
You have in 13th spot Nick Whitehill, who will start alongside Brian Stern for the Rocky Mountain region. Then you have Chad Hayon, who will start alongside Lee Binkley. You have Peter Zurian, who will start alongside Ben Bulkley in the 18th position. Jeremy Main will start in 19th with Kevin Schultz back at 20th. Then you have the 958, who will start alongside Chris Duffy. You have Casey McDonald back in 23rd. These drivers all within a 1 second mark as well, such as Patrick Gill, who will start back in the 24th position.
25th is going to go to Ankerberg Zona with Avijit Barua in 26. Lervold will start in the 27th spot, followed by Drankovic there in 28th. Ward Preston then in P29 will be flanked by Guillermo Mungia. And of course, you've got Carl Boccieri starting in 31st, with Andrew Elsom in 32nd, and Arnie Clayson going to be last on the field when we get to the green flag. So before we get to that green flag, just a couple housekeeping things. They have a couple rule changes over the off season. One of the big ones is their blue flag rules have changed. If the gap is less than 1 second, the car receiving the blue flag must let the other car by within 3 corners. So they do get the blue flag within about 1.5 seconds, so they will see it coming. But by the time they look down at their relative box and see 1 second apart, they're going to have to get out of the way pretty soon. And thankfully, this is a track where it'll be easy to adapt to that. The other big one is that they have no drive-through penalty at 17 incidents. It just goes straight to a disqualification at 25 incident points out there. So it is basically no warning on this one now, Justin. Once you hit those 25, that's it, you're out.
I think for a track like this tonight, it's going to be somewhat difficult to get to the 25. You have to be cutting a lot of corners to get to that mark. But tonight, I think it's still important to be able to make sure you keep the track clean, be able to limit the off tracks in general to make sure you don't cost yourself time in spots like Le Mans at the bus stop tonight. These overcast skies and this cool racetrack, on these gusts of wind, going to be very difficult conditions in terms of some of the visibility, but the racing itself should be fun here on the high banks, to say the very least. I think it's going to also be intriguing to see how the drivers play things on the fuel strap, because one of the things that was updated this year was to 70% for the fuel, to make sure there's just the one stop. It's going to be important to make sure you manage that and choose the right timing for your lap and be able to get that fuel just right, because as we know, fuel is time in the pit boxes.
Yeah, and it's with that limited fuel this year, it's a much smaller window than what they saw last year, where drivers at times, for some of the tracks, were going less than 10 minutes to go before they were pitting. This time around, we saw most drivers have to pit before the 20-minute to go mark left in the race. So a little bit more narrow window, and will make that fuel saving all the more critical out there, because you could do a lot to help yourself in pit lane by limiting the time that you are stationary. Looks like clock just about getting to zero, and then we're going to line the cars up. They'll have half a pace lap, and we'll release them for the first race of Series 13 on this one. We had some good action in the first 2 races, but definitely saw quite a bit of that fuel-saving strategy. So don't be surprised if things are maybe a bit less action-filled at the start, as everybody is going to maybe be waiting rather than pushing hard to pass other cars. And it doesn't mean that things aren't happening. It's just we kind of have to wait for that kettle to boil, right, Justin?
Yes, with a track like this, it takes time, right, to be able to plan out your strategy. It's not quite as simple we've seen over the years on what's past 10 cars in 3 laps. No, we've seen you battle too long in the infield. It can really cause things to spread apart pack-wise, and your competitors going to have a hard time to be able to try and get that draft back. But it's going to be that balance on finding the right times for the aggression, but also finding the right times to know you need to remain calm and patient, get into plot and planning mode, knowing you've got to make sure you're in the right position to move forward and your pit strategy.
See the cars now lining up on the back stretch, and with all the fog out here. Now, before we had just, a hint of light still peeking through by the time the cars gridded up, but the fog has made it very, very dark out here. So definitely different from what we had experienced previously. You can see Aaron Sunday there starting from inside of the second row. Found out some interesting notes from the drivers over the offseason. One of the ones that really struck me is that actually Aaron Sunday has a second home in Kenya. How's that for a summer vacation home?
That's definitely unique to be able to say, hey, I have homes in multiple countries, especially in multiple continents. It'd definitely be a challenge to manage the multiple houses, but it's good on him to be able to have that affordability, but also have that luxury of houses. But for some of the other drivers too, you're talking about in many cases years of experience, and a lot of drivers that just want to be able to connect with their fellow Porsche drivers and be able to race. You have a wide range of experience. Some drivers in the 70s, in fact, in terms of the age brackets, like Anker Bergson in regards to him, and many others looking to see what they can do tonight.
I do love that about the PCA, that they have so many different ages, all the way down to teenagers to, like you said, those in their 70s still competing and still competitive as well. Looks like they're ready to go. Control being given over to Charlie Fair, and the green flag is out. He gets a pretty good jump over Elizondo, but as we know, turn one can be a little bit messy sometimes. This series prides itself on clean racing, so let's hope that holds true here as well as they all file into turn one. So far, we're not seeing any incidents. It looks like it is nice and clean down through the first couple corners, but now we hit the International Horseshoe where they brake heavily. Few drivers peeking down to the inside, but so far, so good, Justin.
No major dive bombs, no major lunges. Everybody basically giving themselves a fair bit of space actually in the horseshoes so far. Nice and clean start for the entire field at the moment. And already the plot and plan portion of the racing, you'd have to think, getting started with Aaron Sunday just sitting in second, trying to see what he can do in the draft, with everybody else trying to stay in this choo-choo train for the most part.
Did find one car that had an issue, and that was Jake Gerbino. Spun himself off, I think, coming through turn two there, that little chicane that kind of jinks back and forth after turn one. But he's actually already caught the back of the pack, but unfortunately lost a lot of positions. The bright green car of Charlie Fair leads them down into the Le Mans chicane, with Aaron Sunday still chasing in second. He managed to get by Elizondo at the start of this race, trying to keep touch like you've been talking about, Justin, and not lose those fast drivers. You want to be in that top group.
And that's going to be the critical thing, is staying lockstep, being able to equalize the pace. The infield in particular is going to be part of that separation point. We see many times when it comes to racing here at Daytona with the little road course, the best of the best drivers are going to be separated in the horseshoes. Even with the draft being an equalizer to close things, it's so easy to separate. But this is what happened to Jake Gerbino. Looked like he had a bit of a bobble, maybe contacted with some of the curbing in that mix of the pack. Lucky to not have any extra hits there, just sent him off from the infield.
He's already made up at least one spot, and he's back into 32nd, though Chad Casey is dropping down my timing screen. I wonder if something happened to him just recently. It looks like he is going to lose a ton of spots. Here's another look. Yeah, I'd say that was just the curb. I don't think he touched that other car there.
Yeah, you're right on the curbing. Just he took too much of it with the right side, where it just jolted out off the suspension, just sent him off kilter and basically weight shifted the car into that grass. That is something you have to be careful of, and that's kind of why I emphasize being careful on the apexes, be careful some of the off tracks. This with 379, yeah, just looped it around, just carried too much speed through the in and out.
Oh, in the worst possible situation. I mean, you can see he can't really go anywhere because, one, there's no openings. Two, it's a little blind with that wall there on seeing when you'll be able to get turned around, and that sent him to the very back, essentially. Fair leads Sunday, leads Elizondo up here at the top. They're also pulling along Estupinian before you finally get something of a break, but not a big one, down to Karachai. It's about a second apart from fourth to fifth. but I still think you could count that as part of that group if you could just reel them in a tiny little bit. If he loses more, though, he could fall out of range.
Yeah, and I think at this point, in fact, that 78 machine might have just fallen back out of the range with how that draft has gone so far, because you already see it just up the road there. 78 having Jim Walsh trying to leapfrog, and when you have drivers just say, I'm going to try and make a pass, like we're starting to see a couple people make moves in this grouping, that's where you start to lose time. That's where it can cost you that extra half a second to a second. You end up battling too much with yourself, and at this point, they've definitely lost the lead group. They're pushing and shoving in the horseshoes now.
Yeah, that was Olin Murphy. He got one spot coming through turn one, is going for more here in the infield section. And Murphy is actually back to where he started this race, so he must have lost some at the beginning and is just trying to make them back up at this stage. But even if he gets past Jim Walsh, who's the next one in front of him, that's where we start to see a gap here. And he's going to have a hard time catching up to Gilles Estupinian up in that fourth position. Back onto the banking they go. Walsh could use some good results here. Even in real life, unfortunately, just had a lot of bad luck out racing in the Porsche Sprint Challenge. And him leading this group is a good sign right now. At least he's in the top 5 and leading a bunch of cars. Yeah, look at how dark it is with that fog just looking down the back straightaway.
Yeah, just adds that extra tinge of darkness when you look at some of these farther shots up to the banking. But in the cockpit itself, it's not as bad as it was during the practice and the warm-up, potentially, in terms of the fog. Not that bad so far, but so far, you did mention that top 4. All being able to break away last time by in the 145.3s for the most part. The tough thing is that Charlie Ferrer up and front as that lead car just has that extra tenth of speed, just seems to be down in just that extra little bit in the infield. It's that draft that's really been helping everybody else to stay in this grouping so far.
Yeah, and we haven't seen Sunday really close tight to him, so it does seem like that's legitimate pace that he's able to stay ahead of. His Olin Murphy has a bit of a connection issue there for some reason, and hopefully that doesn't happen too many times, because the live race stewards will be watching that and can ask you to park if they see you blink too much. But coming down through the kink is still Walsh leading this crew of cars. Let's see how far back this goes. My goodness, ways back. I think Chris Duffy in 18th is where I'm seeing this group ending.
And that kind of just solidifies how some of the battling pushed a few of the drivers back into each other for the groupings. But at this point, it's going to be where you have to see what you can try and get. If in some of these cases, if you're in the 18s at this point, would it be a surprise to see some people maybe try and fight? But we've seen that most of these drivers have definitely thought big picture, just trying to make sure they don't cost themselves too much. Just try and stay in a good rhythm and don't take an off track, don't take any silly mistakes in terms of the racing lines in this entire grouping. They seem pretty even-footed in that main second conga line.
This is Karachai versus Murphy for that 7th spot. So Murphy lost another one. He must have given up one to Mike Sachs there, who seems to have taken that 6th place right back from him. And on the bottom, you can see our leaders. Not a whole lot happening in there, as we kind of predicted that most drivers who are smart about this going to just be kind of biding their time. Very different lines, though, coming into turn 1, though. Murphy and Mehmet Karachai definitely going, one going wide, one going very shallow into that corner. In fact, again, the green and black of Mehmet Karachai really using a shallow line into the turn. So it's not giving him anything quite yet, but he seems to like it.
Yeah, I don't mind that line, actually, that he had into turn 1 in particular, because if you can make it stick, carry speed while getting it slowed down in the middle of the in and out, essentially, you can gain a fair bit of time. And I think that's where Karachai is really trying to chomp, especially knowing that Murphy, for whatever reason, just takes this corner here into NASCAR 1 extremely wide. And I'm not sure if Murphy realizes that that's actually costing him potentially a little bit of time, because he's taking that extra distance and extra runway to be able to gain speed and causing those extra few meters of overall driving distance that just see that distance drop back a bit.
Oh no, did Curbino have more issues? This time that looked like it was contact. Not sure who that was, but coming into turn 6, car gets spun and is facing the wrong way. Patrick Gill with a blink and a spin. Everybody behind him doing a great heads up and braking in time to avoid running into him. He finds a spot to slot into and off he goes.
Yeah, that was not the greatest of spots, to say the very least, to have any incidents. We see a lot of potential with stack-ups in that part of the racetrack, and that's why people get the warnings when it comes to technical issues. You don't want to end up having a technical issue where you don't see your competitor, you don't know where they are, and you end up having contact there. It looks like we have a lot of shuffling all of a sudden in the pack here as well. I think Murphy just fell down the pile, and as everyone else in the lead group stays calm.
Well, a bunch of drivers did. We had a big incident. We'll see if we can spool this one up. It starts with Sachs and Walsh coming into turn 1, and then it collected a number of cars. No wonder there was a big shakeup. Olin Murphy behind it was trying to avoid, but the car of Walsh just bounced right back into him. Now, I'm not sure if it started with contact into the back of Jim Walsh, but I know he got turned into that pit exit barrier, and that bounced him back out. So that's what made things worse there.
I was about to say that, if anything, was the worst part, because that, with the way the pit exit wall is, if you end up hitting it, well, it ricochets you back to the racetrack. It pings you back with significant damage. It basically becomes a parking lot in that scenario. So I think at this point, that kind of solidifies, if you can make it stick, you can send it deep from what we've seen previously, but there's an asterisk to that. If you send it deep and you send it into the back end of a car in that position, that's also a risk you take. Is you carry so much speed, you could spin somebody out and just knock them off their moorings, and that, I think, is what has really broken up the pack. That was your main second group that just got shuffled.
Yeah, that was at the very front of it, so that caused a bigger gap to lead and definitely brought a number of drivers many positions. Carlos Lopez up 4 now into 5th, and Brian Stern 8 positions gained already as we come back to the battle for the lead. Still 4 cars in this group. Ferrer, Sunday, Elizondo, Estupinian, and I believe it looks like Mike Sachs has been given a black flag, and I'm not sure if that was involved. Yep, it was indeed, because he did get into the back of Jim Walsh, and that kicked off that whole fracas.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Just try to send it that much deeper in terms of momentum. Just didn't get it wound up in time. That's fine in Danny if you're running different lines. It just so happened again that both ran that bottom groove, that shower line. And now that difference in the pack, near 10 seconds because of all that fracas up front.
Back to Estupinian. He's trying so hard to hold on the back of Elizondo here. He's about 0.6 of a second back. Actually, I could almost say the same for Sunday, because he's backed about 8 or 9 tenths behind Charlie Ferrer. He's dangerously close to losing that slipstream. If Ferrer breaks it, that's going to make life that much easier, because he isn't helping along Aaron Sunday's fuel consumption. Meanwhile, as we jump back here to Lee Binkley, he's got Nathan Abuhaka behind him, both of them bounding over those curbs. Oh, somebody going slow. Nick Whitehill must have gotten a slowdown penalty there.
Had to have, if he's coming to a near dead stop like that. Can confirm he did cut the inside of the left chicane. But that's a dangerous spot to have that rapid amount of slowdown, even though it was towards the outside because some of the battling. Look at this fight, though. Binkley trying to defend, try and take that shower line, take that inside away, but that 958, your biggest mover, making it look easy.
Wow, and for Bulkley, he lost out big time lost a position to Abu Haka. Now it looks like Chris Duffy going to try and go around the outside down into the International Horseshoe. Cuts back underneath, goes for the over-under. It works decently well, but he just doesn't have the speed, and he's covered off very quickly by Ben Bulkley. So Whitehill, yeah, here we can see him giving that time back. Now, to his credit, he's kind of off the racing line. He's staying up high on the banking. It just maybe was a bit early that he started slowing down and everybody behind him was still accelerating. So thankfully didn't come to any sort of contact and just gave a couple drivers a bit of a scare.
A bit, to say the very least. Good reactionary skills, though, to be able to avoid contact. But the Central Indiana region driver, let me ask you this. I can't tell what the paint scheme is supposed to be, if it's a dinosaur that it's supposed to be with the teeth.
You don't know about Roxy?
No, I do not.
So these are very popular paints over the past year or so. There's Rexy, which is the first one. That's your green one. That's a T-Rex. The pink one is Roxy, and I believe there's a yellow one. I can't remember the name of that one, but it's appearing a lot on Porsche race cars and in the sim. People love that thing. Speaking of which, I love the rubber ducky on Chris Duffy's car. Definitely some nice levity that he's bringing to things as he's going to try and go down the inside of Bulkley. Bulkley doesn't fight that one hard, although that's very deep from Chris. He manages to get it turned into the apex. That's going to move him up to 10th.
Nicely done for the rubber ducky of Chris Duffy. You can hear the ring of it and why you put the rubber ducky on the side of the car. But he is one of those that mentioned in terms of some of the details that he learned to drive at speed initially with a very low power 2-liter early Porsche 924. That's the difference to a 924S for those that don't know in that world in the PCA BEs. Now, he replicates the real-world experience in iRacing by having his throttle mapped to a button, interesting enough. So like a controller, almost.
What happened to Andrew Elsum? Oh, and the car in front went off as well. That was a bit strange. Both of them going wide and not hitting the tire barrier, which is rare. Although, no, there is damage on that pink car. I didn't quite see who it is exactly, but the front was definitely missing. So whoever that was seems to have made contact somewhere. As we come back to the rubber duffy, and he's still looking to try and run down Abu Haka, who's facing off with Binkley just up the road.
Yeah, so far, looking pretty solid. He's also been cutting his way to the field, and there's the reason for the pink car. Hard snap, hard contact. Well, yeah, just significant contact, and interesting enough, not mandatory damage. It just so happened in the case of Elson that he just was, Elsem should say, it was just stopped off the track. But this pack just will not stop battling for this 8th position. Binkley keeps having to make defensive maneuvers every time through turn 1.
Yeah, it seems like he keeps getting a pretty good run there. Before this kicks off again, real quick, we want to mention Princess Cruises. They're the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 13, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships. They're sailing to more than 330 global destinations. So reach out to the PCA Concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. Back onto the banking we go in this battle for 8th position. Binkley leads Abu Haka with Duffy and Ben Bulkley. Include Nick Whitehill in this group now. He's kind of encroaching upon the back of them, but the pink Roxy car of Abu Haka has quite a bit of speed. He's going to look down to the inside. It's tough passing into the Le Mans chicane, though. He's going to give it a try, and Binkley almost facilitates it as he braked quite early there.
If anything, I think he kind of said, you know what, after so many pokes and prods, may as well just let him have the spot and be in a position to just let the slipstream drive you forward and save a little bit of gas. And when you have to take so many shallow lines, like we've already seen with Binkley, it's not a surprise. Jeremy Hall A little bit too much speed through the corner. Very lucky to avoid contact, though, with that black and green machine. Nearly drifted into the left side door.
Yeah, that could have been disastrous. Fantastic job on his part, for sure. As we follow this group around, Casey McDonald now catching up to the back of it. But yeah, I like what you're saying. I think that does make sense. And in fact, another instance of leaving the door open for Binkley, this time for Chris Duffy to easily sneak through. So maybe this is something where Lee is thinking, I'm holding up cars here, so might as well get in behind them, let them pull me along. I'll save fuel. I'll be faster overall. Another one. Well, maybe not. Maybe he's got an actual issue, because that's 3 cars now that he's letting by, with Ben Bulkley now moving to 10th.
Yeah, that's curious a little bit in that regard. What's going on with the 907? Well, I guess at this point, we know there's a lot of damage, so why not just take the slowdown and take the chicanes, I guess you can say. Get those tire barriers there to make sure you can't just floor it through the bus stop chicane, through Le Mans, and be in a position where you can gain time with the slowdown. That, again, that car already having significant damage already.
Yeah, I think that was the smart thing to do in that situation. He wasn't going to be able to take it at speed with the damage he had. The good news is they do have a spare car if they need to repair any damage, so he'll probably be saving that until he comes in for his pit stop, although I think they're getting very close to the pit window here, so he should be able to come in for that pretty soon. Andrew Elsom with another problem. Yeah, there's your Rexy car. And again, just a simple spin, keep it off the wall, and he barely did in the end as we return to our top 4. Ferrer, Sunday, Elizondo, Estupinian, all split by about 1.3 seconds.
Yeah, and still staying lockstep. That draft, again, it has been the main thing keeping Sunday and company in this grouping. Ferrer has been very strong in the middle portion of the racetrack. If you haven't noticed, in this point, we've seen them. They've gone from the 3-car lane separation back up to 6. And that kind of showcases just the talent that we've seen from Charlie, that we've seen a lot of in qualifying, to get that difference compared to everyone grouped together on the board. And right now, Charlie's making it clear, if you're going to beat him, you have to out-strategize him.
This is Brian Stern currently leading. You can swap that, actually. Battle for 7th is on the bottom there. A red one. Okay, now I've seen a yellow one. I haven't seen a red version of this sort of T-Rex car on the Porsche. Ahead of Albu Haka with Guillermo Munguia in behind them. Oh, and he gets hit from behind by Chris Duffy. We just caught a bit of it on the screen. He slides off and falls back down, but he did not hit the wall, I think, so he'll be able to pull away from that one. But the front of the car has surely got to have some damage after that, and he's having to do a 3-point turn just to get it facing the right way.
Terrible luck for Duffy. Significant damage to the front end. But that's the tough thing about when somebody makes a mistake in the bus stop. You're talking about a portion of the racetrack, right, where you have to be in a rhythm. If someone has a mistake, that breaks the rhythm and you have a hard time responding. That battle for 7th now is really turned into a 2-car battle.
Yeah, that spread them apart pretty significantly there. Bulkley now back by about 1.6 seconds, but you could see some defense from Stern in that 666 machine. So he's feeling the pressure from Nathan in that 958, although not down here into the Western Horseshoe. He gets to take his normal racing line there, but surely we'll see that pink machine start to regain ground once they get onto the oval.
Just taking a little bit more shower lines. This is what I was talking about. You see that little bobble from the pink machine? That was just enough where it almost came to a dead stop almost. And that was Munguia, who we've already seen with the damage, had just taken the faster pair apparently. So you have a lap car in the mix of the traffic. It just ends up being in a bad spot where he ends up having a mistake where he starts to bobble, and you have nowhere to go in the case of Duffy at full speed.
Yeah, you can't really react coming through the chicane here. It just, you're kind of on a trajectory, and there's no changing that in quick order as we follow the battle for 7th, coming around onto the tri-oval once again. By the way, I saw Sunday get extremely close to Ferrer up at the front as they came by the start-finish line. So I wonder if there might be some changes happening there at some point. Big defense from Brian once again. Nathan going to go up to the high side. How deep can he brake? Well, he's not going to try and brake deep. He gives way down into the corner, and that gives him the chance to try and cut back underneath. Nearly gets his nose in there, but Brian covers him off late. Interesting stuff. Nathan trying to be sneaky.
Yeah, just trying to cross him over, and that's kind of part of the planning. You see opportunities. You see holes that can open up. You don't want to end up forcing a move either. He is still 2-3 car lengths back in that case. But take a look at Carlos Lopez. Still in the 5th position. He's actually in position to run away from the 78 machine and break that fully by 1.4 seconds last time by. A nice setup, nice full setup with the lights to be able to keep him in mind just above and for his surroundings in that pack.
Yeah, that was a very cool setup. We saw a glance of it earlier during qualifying, but you're right about him pulling a gap over Karachai here. He's almost out of that range. If he could get himself free, it could be what for him would hopefully be a boring race because he could focus on his own. Because unfortunately, he's 14 seconds behind Estupinian up there in 4th place. So unlikely that he's running any of the 4 down ahead of him that you see here on your screen now. But better to kind of be on his own than to be stuck towing along all of his rivals. Speaking of Estupinian, he's decided it's go time. He's now starting to threaten on Elizondo down into turn 1, but Elizondo denies him.
Just a thought, just a little bit of a test because there was a door open. It's opened up a little bit in the first sector the past couple laps I've noticed to be able to try and make a peek. But Estupinian doesn't necessarily have to do it now. He's still got 35 minutes and plenty of estimated laps to work with. It's just a thought to try and pressurize the mistake potentially and see if an opportunity presents itself to be able to leapfrog without costing time, which is the key word, without costing them time and costing them the draft of the top 2.
Back on to the banking once more. A little bit of a wheel spin, it looked like, from Elizondo there. And do we have drivers pitting? This is Matt Owens, I think, taking a stop. And again, this is a bit early. It is within the pit window, but we don't usually see drivers doing that. So not sure if this was scheduled or if he had some sort of problem and decided to come in and take that free repair. He is returning back to the track now out of pit lane as we come back to our top 4 once again. Definitely some impressive pace from these drivers. As I mentioned, a big gap to everybody else behind them. So they have been both consistent and quick, Justin.
Yes, indeed. I've been looking at how they've been able to stay lockstep. Their average lap times, for those curious, have all been in the 145, 3s, 4s, and 5s essentially on pace. There hasn't been really that much variance in the pack. If anything, Charlie's average tempo has dropped compared to where he was nearly able to break away earlier on, and I think that's part of where seeing this grouping compress a little bit more tighter compared to what we've seen earlier on, as the pace differences has changed a bit from the point.
Jeremy Main here running in 18th position, a little ways down right now, unfortunately, but he's up 1 from where he started, so at least he's seen a net gain. Apparently enjoys fly fishing in his time off, but also does autocross. So thought maybe for a second that Abu Haka had that pass done. He is hot on the heels of Stern coming down to the Western Horseshoe. This time, all he needs is a good run coming out of turn 6. He could get himself a nice slingshot around that bright red 666 car.
And keep in mind, Abu Haka did in the past couple laps when we were looking away, made contact actually with the back end of the car in front and crumpled up a bit of his right front. So he is dealing with a touch bit of damage. It's not been going great for the 907, by the way. He's had a few spins, including this hit to the safer barrier to add to his frustrations, already 3 laps down.
Yeah, this will be one to forget for Will, unfortunately. And we take a look, and Stern has not given up the position yet. I thought maybe Nathan had a good chance of it this time by. Much shallower line for Aaron Sunday, and deep braking for Elizondo. He's going for the move. Car slides a little bit wide, but he holds on to the wheel-to-wheel action as they try and hold station through turn 2. That gives him the chance. That's the first change for position in the top 4 we have seen since lap 1, essentially. Nicely done by the 101 car.
Seen the hole, took the opportunity, and we've seen people make it stick from that deep throughout the race at times. The confidence was there from Russell, and now the thing is, they didn't really lose too much time in the draft, and that's the critical timing, right? If you can do that without costing yourself, say, 8, 9 tenths, usually you can argue that's the great move, and right now he's in a great position to try and see, is this going to be a chance for him to leapfrog Charlie now?
Hey, look at the tower. Abu Haka made it happen finally. Stern has been overtaken. Nathan into P7, so that must have happened pretty recently because we only looked away from that battle just a minute or 2 ago. And now he's got clear air in front of him. What can Roxy do from here to catch up to Carlos Lopez? Boy, Carlos ran away that time, blinking his lights, I think maybe in celebration because there's nobody in front of him for him to blink them at right now, but probably extremely happy that he finally got it done.
And a look back at where the move came, just opened the door in the first horseshoe, essentially, after a missed apex from Stern. But sometimes it's just how it breaks. But really, though, up front, here we go. Charlie's got his first major test. Russell sent to deep again, shutting the door for her to be able to try and make sure that that 101 didn't get a full lunge to try and take the inside and try and make it side by side for the lead.
This makes me wonder, Justin. Elizondo has suddenly turned up the aggression. Does he feel like he's saved enough fuel? It's been half the race, almost exactly now, and he's on the attack. I wonder if he had the pace, but was holding it in reserve and is now finally unleashing it.
It's kind of into my thought process here too, because based on the numbers you had mentioned earlier from the estimates, we're still a few minutes away from scheduled pit stops. But if he feels he can send it a little bit more aggressive, use a little bit more fuel burn in terms of on throttle time on some of these lunges, then he might be in the spot where he's like, I think I'm going to, even with that, be near even for the race lead. Sometimes, though, you just get in that spot where you're a few minutes away from pit stops. It's time to go for the go button, and Charlie's already shown he's a bit vulnerable with the pace difference in these past 15 minutes compared to how he started the race.
Hinkley now up into P8, so shuffling around there in that second group. While we got a moment, we once again want to mention Princess Cruises, that they're the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 13, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. As look at this, we got a change for the lead for the first time in this race. Elizondo making the pass down into turn 1 past Charlie Ferrer. There may have been a little bit of contact involved in that as well.
Definitely contact. In fact, just heard on the radio, Charlie Ferrer, wheel damage. It appears that Russell hit the left rear, trying to send an appealing Charlie off the bottom instead of allowing Ferrer to make a defensive move again like the previous lap. Charlie's going to need to be able to wheel this thing to the pit stop with a damaged race car.
Interesting that he's reporting wheel damage, unless his spotter is telling him that, because I'm not seeing a black and orange flag. So the car theoretically is okay enough that he's not being told he must pit and repair, but I'm sure he could still be feeling it. Look at that. Another crossover move down to the inside. You could just barely see that contact, and that actually sent Elizondo over the grass. Great job by Charlie keeping it from spinning out to the outside there.
Yeah, and that kind of showcases the skill set here. He is losing a fair bit of time, though, since that contact. So it's pretty clear he's not as comfortable. Now, because of that hit to the left rear, and Charlie has already indicated he's going to try it for one more lap. He might have to come in early from what it's describing here in this pack. He does not feel comfortable with the car.
He does have that spare car, so yeah, if he feels like he's lacking the speed as he has one of the most difficult braking zones here down into turn one, it handles it fine. I'm a bit surprised he's as vocal as he is about the issues out here, because he's keeping pace with Elizondo. He's still within reach of him, and it doesn't look like the car's too out of sorts down into some of the braking zones. But again, if he doesn't feel good, then that's the important thing. And I'm with you. I think he should pit and take that free repair.
And now keep in mind that's going to put him in a spot where he's going to be outside the draft window. Some are pitting, like Nick Whitehill, Casey McDonald, and Jeremy Main. So it is a pit stop window, an early call. So it's not detrimental. It's just going to be, where is he going to end up? Is he going to end up in traffic? Is he going to have the ability to draft? Or is he going to be on an island like we've already seen with Carlos Lopez?
Yeah, that's difficult to tell until we get there. But I think it's not too far to the end of the pit window, actually, at this stage. Remember, we said about 23 minutes left to go for most drivers, 20 minutes to go or thereabouts. Oh, what happened there?
I think that wheel situation with Charlie just went to overdrive. I noticed he's not fully straight on the steering wheel in terms of straightaways, and I think that's kind of throwing off how much wheel input he's had to throw. He just cut the course in the bus stop. Not a surprise. It is pit stop time.
Gives the time back by the time he gets to the braking of the pit entry. You got to be careful with that, because sometimes you can get a penalty for trying to pit in while serving that time back. But it looks like he got away with it. Yeah, big save as it snapped on him coming through the bus stop. But he did a good job keeping that from becoming a mess at the wall on the exit. He takes his stop at the same time that Karachai does. Lopez is in. Looks like Abu Haka pitting. So this, I'd say, is pretty close to when he would have been pitting anyways.
Maybe a couple laps sooner than what I think he may have expected, because now he's not going to be in sync or in the same grouping of the rest of his lead lappers. But now it's going to get really intriguing what the rest of this group responds with, because Sunday still got a clean car. You have Elizondo, who's going to be dealing with the right front damage until he takes that fast repair for the pit lane. And then you have that 21 machine just in the popcorn seat. That's just keeping it calm in this group. They do have lap traffic, interestingly enough, up the road, and Klassen to potentially deal with. We'll see if that impacts things before the pit stops, or if they pit before they reach the lap car in the blue flag.
So I can report that Farah took his free repair. And also, the good news is his pit stop doesn't look like it was significantly longer. So even though he was leading the group and maybe consuming a bit more fuel, it looks like it won't hurt him dramatically, because I'm looking down at those behind him, and he's pretty comparable with a lot of the other pit stop times, maybe just slightly longer. Meantime, here we go for Elizondo and Sunday and Estupinian. All three of our leaders are in.
That makes it even better, I think, actually, if you can say so, when it comes to Charlie then. Because if it was only off by a lap, that's not that significant. It's going to be just, what is the pit stop delta? It looks like the 101 missed the stall, though. That's going to hurt and cost them 2-3 seconds.
He missed it by a long ways as well. Yeah, it's going to be unfortunate that he might not emerge with everybody else, which could save the bacon of Charlie Ferrer because he was second in line. It all depends on whether or not the others. Oh, he gets out at about the same time. He loses 2 positions. Oh, he's got to get this sorted soon, though, and he has to file in behind, unfortunately, because Aaron Sunday emerged ahead of him. That was tight down into the single file exit of this pit lane. Where is Ferrer? Oh, Ferrer's behind them. He did not win out. Gilles Estupinian, who was at the back of that group, comes out in the lead.
He had the chance to save off the most cars slipstream-wise. Triple toes better than a double, or just a single, or even having the lead group. He had the shortest one of the shortest pit stops out of the entire field, 21.4. So Elizondo cost himself with the shorter stop and cost himself the delta with the missed pit box situation, 3 seconds. That's where, and in turn, sees Joe take that advantage to be able to take the race lead. And now Elizondo has actually lost the toe at the top 2 and has fallen back to Charlie Ferrer to give him draft.
And it gets worse. Elizondo has been given a black flag for that contact with Charlie Ferrer. So yeah, Ferrer's behind him, but I guess he gets the last laugh on this one as Russell's going to disappear in a lap or 2 here. So if Charlie can catch back up to Sunday, he might not be out of the hunt for the win here, but he's going to have to really hustle because he's currently about 2.5 seconds behind them. And there you can see Elizondo was allowing Charlie Ferrer through, knowing his fight is no longer with that 28 car, and he's serving that penalty immediately.
Yeah, but the fight's on for the race lead. Sunday's been keeping it calm much of the race. It looks like he's now gone into full attack mode. All sorts of different lines. They're trying to cross back and forth with Estupinian to try and see if he can get him to change his line for the corner. Sunday might be now just trying to search and plan things to see what would be the right move without it being a dive bomb and leading to contact.
Sunday so close to coming back with a victory here and try and defend his title, as Gilles Estupinian going to try and stop that from happening. It looks like he's going to have a fight on his hands. Charlie Ferrer, he's down to 2 seconds, so he is starting to gain a little bit. We'll look and watch to see what it is at the end of this lap. Less than 20 minutes left to go. All drivers have completed their pit stops. Where did our 101 come out, actually? Oh, looks like he may have left the session, unfortunately. So I guess he decided it just wasn't his day today, as it all kind of piled on at the end. Carlos Lopez gets promoted to 4th. Mehmet Karachai gets promoted up into P5, where that P4 might actually have a battle later on. They're only separated by about 0.7 of a second. So still lots of developments in this race, changing the ever-flowing picture here, Justin.
So a lot of time on the clock, yes, but I think even though there is that amount of time, there's still going to be a bit of battling. I'm not sure what Elsam's car is trying to do right now with the hood.
Is it trying to tell us something?
I think it's trying to tell us the car is broken, because it's kind of hard if the hood's flying for the wheels. It's kind of hard to keep grip to the road. I don't know if that would have been the cause of spin, but it definitely didn't help.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the more unusual glitches I've seen with the damaged model. I doubt that was causing it, unless it was like trying to actually drag. I'd be very curious what the hood was actually doing on his end, because I don't think that was supposed to be accurate there. Oh, did we have a problem with Lee Binkley? Uh-oh, Lee Binkley was having a great race. He was in the top 10, but he's fallen to 12th here. Turn 1, facing the wrong way. He slowly rejoins to try and safely find a spot, and eventually he's able to get there.
Able to at least find a hole. Just I think trying to make sure he doesn't hold up any battles here. Pop it a pack. Just notice right here, a little bit too much. Just a little bit of a rotation on speed. It just so happened that Whitehill helped finish the job, was just in a spot where he couldn't back up the momentum, and Binkley just has to turn it around.
Still have 29 cars out on the track out of our 33 starters. So while there have been some incidents, we're still doing pretty good in terms of attrition. Estupinian in the blue number 21 ahead of Aaron Sunday. It's about 0.6 of a second between them. Charlie Ferrer last lap, a 45.9, Sunday 45.9. So about even terms between himself and that lead pack. He's going to need a little bit more pace if he wants to try and go for this win. Or the other thing he could hope for is if those top two start battling a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the more helpful thing. We know that Charlie Ferrer's got the speed in the infield. That's where he seems to be gaining a couple tenths. It's just the fact he doesn't have that slipstream ability down the straightaway that really gives him the boost. That's going to be the tough thing in terms of that. Now, I think he's got the speed. If he can get within a second and a half, get himself in the slipstream range, he can pull himself forward like that. It's going to require not just the battling, I think. I think you can't just fully count on the battling. You have to count on the raw speed that we're seeing in this infield to keep pushing him forward here over the next 10 estimated laps or so to get in that draft distance. Also, there's people with blue flags coming up that are going to be helpful for the draft.
That's a good point. Yeah, the traffic could either hold up drivers, because while they do have those new stricter blue flag rules, you could still find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time out there. Elsom pulled out of the way for all three of our leaders. Now, one thing to note, too, with Charlie being quicker on the infield, the previous two races last week were open setup. This is fixed setup. So everybody's got the same car out there. And unless Charlie got some more damage after his pit stop, because remember, he took his free repair, he should theoretically still have the same car as Estupinian and Sunday, who are going side by side. Here we go. Sunday has decided now is go time. He's going to tack around the outside.
This is what Charlie needed. A bit of a fight for the infield, already costing him some time. Just not going to be able to stick, I think, to the outside. We've seen the inside. If you can take that line away and get a little bit of an edge through the in and out, that's where some of these passes have really been able to come in. You have to be extremely confident on the brakes to make it work from the outside. That one move, 4/10 gain from Charlie.
Before this heats up anymore, real quick, I want to give one last mention about Princess Cruises being the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation and partner of Series 13, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships. They're all sailing to more than 330 global destinations. So reach out to the PCA Concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. And that takes us to the finish of this race, where Aaron Sunday is going to try to add to his tally of wins here in PCA. Close behind Gilles Estupinian. He was ahead of him before the pit stops. Can he swap that back around here on track?
That's going to be the tough thing right now, and the difficult thing I'm noticing when it comes to Sunday is he's not necessarily getting the best out of these apexes right now. He lost a bit of time to the bus stop by extra car length or two, and that's going to mean he'll have to reset for an error lap or two if he wants to be able to see if he can make an error move. Interesting enough, in that same circumstance, Charlie Ferrer lost just about all the time he picked up from that initial move. Not sure how that exactly can be, but it just emphasizes the importance of maximizing each of these corners, Joe. Because if you make that mistake, it makes it that much harder on yourself for the rest of the run.
Does look like he cut it down. It's 1.5 seconds to the leader now this time, and he was quicker by 0.7 of a second over Aaron Sunday. So that did hurt them quite a bit. I mentioned we might have a battle for fourth, and they're going to oblige me. Carlos Lopez versus Mehmet Karachai, just outside the podium. Down one for Karachai from where he started. Lopez, a gain of 5 so far in this race. So he's having a good day.
Really good race when it comes to Carlos Lopez. We mentioned he was on his own for a bit. Karachai noticed on the pylon before pit stops, actually found a way to get in front of the 29 for just a little bit. But it should be a decent battle there. We know that Karachai, towards the end of the run, has a good amount of speed and a good amount of pace as a driver to be able to close up a gap like we've seen with Carlos, where he was on that island and basically say, hey, do you need a friend on that island?
Yeah, this is not the friend that Carlos was looking for. And 6.7 seconds to Abu Haka. They are free to battle, I think, this late in the race. So that's looking really good for them at this stage. And as that slows down, Sunday speeds up and, in fact, is looking to make a move on our leader, Estupinian, down into turn 1, forcing him to go defensive into the corner. That last lap for Charlie Fair, a 45.4. For Aaron Sunday, it was a 45.2. But they are both closer to Gilles Estupinian. Big look up the inside, down to the International Horseshoe. Just about gets there, but the door is shut by the 21, and that slowed them down so much more than anything we've seen prior. Charlie Ferrer is now practically there.
Trying to avoid the dive bomb there. He had the chance if he wanted to force it there, but we've already seen with Lozando, if you go too aggressive, you can get that penalization. Didn't want to risk it. Didn't want to risk taking away any opportunities for later and take himself out of the race. But all of that squabbling has gone exactly Ferrer's way. He's now in drafting distance of these top 2. And now it's time to see if the 28 can feast.
Remember, Sunday is our reigning champion in the sport class here. He's looking to defend that title. And he's doing so in a great start, but he wants to make sure and assert his dominance. Oh, that's a huge run here for him coming through the bus stop chicane. He gains a ton of time, almost maybe too much, because now he can't use the slipstream. He's going to have to duck back in and get a second dose of it.
Not sure what the play is here with Sunday. This isn't going to work for the high side unless he's trying the diamond. Looks like there's that little slip. Just get the bit amount of speed difference. Try and get to that outside. See if he can set up an outside lunge. There it is. Deep break, deep pass, deep send. Sunday to the lead.
Fantastic work by the 3-3-1. Charlie Ferrer, though, catching up to them as they go by. Oh, Aaron Sunday off the corner. Aaron Sunday made a mistake. He falls to third. Did he hit the inside wall? I suddenly saw them go by a car. I thought it was a lapped car. Something happened to Sunday.
He oversent it, I think, because you have to be perfect when you send it that deep, Joe. We've seen a couple times today, too much speed coming out of the in and out for that apex off can cause the over rotation. I think that's kind of what happened to Sunday at the very tail end of the corner. A tough break, I think, for the 331. And now Charlie Ferrer's in prime position to try and pounce for the race lead. He's only within 5 car lengths. This is what I'm talking about. Right here, gets on the throttle, sends the rear tire sliding. Good grip to avoid the contact of the wall, but cost himself the chance for the win.
He's got to be kicking himself. He had just picked that up, and now he hands it away in the same corner, essentially. So back to third he goes, 2.3 seconds behind. I don't think he's going to be able to make that up unless these two also start battling hard or someone has a major mistake. Charlie Ferrer, he saw himself shuffle to fourth after that contact. He seemed a little bit flustered by it. I'm sure the red mist was down, but things have suddenly turned in his favor. Can he utilize these series of events to somehow get himself back into the lead and take almost a surprise win after the damage that he experienced earlier in this race?
Good braking once again for Charlie to close up the gap. But all of that's wow. Behind him, Karakai has also been able to slide around. He was in the midst of the battle with Lopez, just about had the spot. Sent it too deep once again. The in and outs really catching drivers off guard. The point I was about to make, though, is the 28 stronger in the infield. better in the bus stop for Espacini, and that's where he's been able to build a buffer. Others, they've been getting contact, setting himself in sliding.
Yeah, Nick Whitehill down to the International Horseshoe, just finding himself to the side of the track. Thankfully did not get all the way to the grass. Off he goes once again. Ferrer still stuck behind Estupinian. 7 minutes to go. Lap time's about 1:45. Maybe about 5 laps left on this for him to try and make this pass. And again, they have a gap, but it's at about 2.2 seconds. So Sunday's maybe made up a tiny bit of time, just not a lot. Ankerberg Zona, by the way, had to serve a penalty. He had an unsafe re-entry a little bit earlier and actually caused another problem for poor Jim Walsh, who I think had more contact with the wall. As we take a look at Estupinian. Oh, we got a black flag for Casey McDonald. What has happened here? Looks like an incident. So he has made contact with somebody. That's 9th place. There he is on your screen, if you can make him out through the mist and the dimness out there. But the 764, unfortunately, going to have to give a little bit of time back as we come back to Estupinian and Ferrer. Charlie, once again, close but no cigar.
A black flag, by the way, with McDonald was because he just spun around Whitehead. We seen on the replay. So Whitehill, I should say. But in regards to your race leaders here, Charlie needs to be able to maximize these apexes. He needs to find a way to get better runs at the bus stop exit, I think, if he's going to get this. Saxton, well, he kept his foot in it to be able to keep it off the racetrack at least, but just, again, too much throttle, quarter exit, lights up the tires, caused the spin around.
Yep. A few donuts from Saxton, but back he goes to the track, and he's going to try to finish this one up. Not his day. He started from 8th, is down to 24th actually on track. Ward Preston finding out just how tough it is through the bus stop chicane, as many drivers over the years have discovered, as you often will see them winding up in that tire barrier. Coming around to that very portion, and here comes some traffic. It's Guillermo Munguia once again. He's going to pull off to the side. Doesn't want to have an incident like we saw like before. And thankfully, that one did not see any incident. So they get through. Ferrer is pulling him in. It's about 2 or 3 car lengths up to the car ahead. It's coming down. They'll approach turn 1. I got to think Gilles going to defend the inside. He would be smart to. He leaves a little bit of a door open, places it right in the middle of the track. Charlie thinks it's not worth the risk yet. He stays behind.
Definitely wasn't the risk to try and poke somewhere where you know it's going to be a compromised line at this point for Charlie. I think going to need to get a little bit closer, get in position to get fully alongside with the help of the slipstream, plan things out that way. Birdsong ends up missing his rhythm in the midst of the bus stop. Good catch to be able to avoid the wall, but that kind of compounds from that black flag earlier.
So the number you need to look for is 3.5 minutes to go here. And yeah, they're definitely not getting around in time for that. So that means next time by, it'll be 2 laps to go for our drivers. Precious few opportunities for the 28 car to try and take the lead back. And for Gilles Estupinian, I mean, we keep talking about Ferrer wanting to get the lead back and take this win. How about the strategy that Gilles has used? Not only was he great on the pit stop using that saved fuel, but when it came down to it, he's defended this lead when it's fallen into his lap.
He's played good defense throughout this entire race. He's played this race smart. We've seen it when he was at the back of the pack as well, where he was very calculated on some of those moves, and why I think he let initially a couple people going and plot and plan things that way. And it's worked out perfectly. He's been able to maintain the buffer for the most part. And now, because he's been so strong for that final half of the racetrack, when it comes to that run to the bus stop onward, that's really set things up perfectly to maintain things, even with Charlie Ferrer's strengths in the infield. Charlie's weaknesses coming back to the oval and through that bus stop compared to Jill has been the difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. He needs to focus on that exit of 6, on the exit of the Le Mans chicane to get an opportunity, use that slipstream to bring this one home. Which of these GT3Rs are going to come away with the opening race win? A little bit more traffic in front of them as well. By the way, at the bottom of your screen, Abu Haka versus Karachai. Mehmet may have lost out to Lopez, but he's going to try and get back to the top 5 if he can get by Nathan. By the way, Nathan up 16 positions. So he's he took your advice that it's difficult to pass here and said, watch this, Justin.
Yes, indeed. And I think Abu Haka has kind of showcased you can find positions. You can have great finishes from the back. It's hard to be able to be in the lead pack in the end from the back. But if you have raw pace, it can take you there. The 958 take it to a top 5, a good points day.
White flag next time by as they come onto the back stretch here, the battle for that 5th position. And yeah, Nathan really good with that raw pace. In fact, his fastest lap comparable to many around him there in the top 5. So he's definitely where he should be. There we go, 1 to go for our top 2. Charlie wasn't there for turn 1. Could he maybe snipe him coming to the line? It can sometimes be close at the very end if you've got that timing right. He tries to open up the entry into the International Horseshoe. He's pulling out all the little tricks now.
That gained him a little bit of time with that diamond line to try and maximize the exit of the first horseshoe. He still needs to get a bit close, trying to get a little bit brave on the brakes to try and capitalize and try and close the gap that way. Doesn't seem to work though for the exit on the speed.
Looks like we may have had an issue for Olin Murphy. Oh, cuts through, spins out. Does he stay off the racetrack? Yeah, it looks like he did. A Mo Handsome car gonna manage to keep from spinning back in the way of everybody. Really, one more major braking zone to go down into the Le Mans chicane for Estupinian and Ferrer. Gilles put himself where he needs to be. He's played beautiful defense, but he's got to have to get the run of his life off this final corner. Same thing with Charlie. Whoever gets the better run probably going to come away with the win here, and it's a great run for Ferrer. He's getting extremely close. He may have timed this beautifully. He's got the run. He's coming up to the back of him. Does he have the steam, though? That's the question. He's starting to run out of it. What's he doing? He's waiting behind him. He hasn't used the slingshot that he had. Is there damage on Charlie's car? Did he not have enough top end speed? He looks to the outside. Estupinian is going to win race 1 today.
Wow. I'm kind of surprised at that move when it comes to Ferrer. We know that it's been tricky to get alongside of the banking, and that's where the momentum dies off. But Charlie just waited till even very late to even try that.
He must have some kind of damage or something as Podium parks up on the outside for a little while to soak in their achievement. Ooh, we had a close finish between Brian Stern and Ben Bulkley, separated by 9,000ths of a second across the line. We tend to see these kinds of battles here at Daytona at the ends of races, offering that great chance to pass somebody right at the very end. But we're going to get an impressive 25 cars finishing on the lead lap for this one. Coming up to the line, that's the difference. 0.07 of a second looks like when you're crossing the start-finish stripe here at Daytona. I hope we get to chat with Charlie and Gilles to find out what cost him at the end and prevented him from managing to overtake. But fantastic cheer for Gilles, who did an incredible job outthinking and outpacing everybody when he needed to. He takes the win over Charlie Ferrer, with Aaron Sunday at least getting a podium on his return as champion. Carlos Lopez will finish fourth, way behind, with Nathan Albuquerque gaining 16 spots for a top 5. Kevin Schultz actually winds up in 6th. Karachai, not sure if he ran out of fuel or what, but he is only 7th, as Brian Stern was 8th, and Bulkley 9th, with Nick Whitehill rounding out your top 10, Justin.
In 11th spot, Jeremy Hall comes away in that spot, 41 seconds back of your race winner. Ervold will finish off in 12th spot, in 13th. Then you have Casey on Ullstorn, who finish off at 14th. Main in 15th. Matt Owens back in the 16th position. Casey McDonald, after his penalty situation, finished off at 17th. Lee Binkley had a good chance for a top 10, slipped over back to 18th. Patrick Gill in 19th. Decent recovery from the crash for Chris Duffy. He still finished in 20th.
Then in 21st, it's Ward Preston. We got interesting stuff happening on the results here, but officially I'm seeing Mike Sachs 22nd, Drakenovich in 23rd. Then you've got Clayson 24th, last on the lead lap. Chris Duffy, P25, Olin Murphy 26, and Ankerberg's on 27th. Andrew Elsom did manage to get home a lap down in 28th. Jim Walsh as well in at 29th. Mungia was our first DNF. Elizondo, Yurtza, and Gerbino also didn't get to see the checkered flag. Let's talk to Gilles Estupinian and see what his thoughts are on this race and his fantastic call on strategy. Gilles, we saw you hovering back there in 4th for much of the first half of the race. Were you saving fuel, and do you think that made the difference that got you out at the front after pit stops?
Certainly it helped a bit. I mean, I was just trying to stay in touch with, Aaron and Charlie were fast in all the practice and quality, so I figured if I could just stay in touch with those guys, and I could see what I could make something happen, maybe, hopefully.
Well, make something happen you did. You wound up coming home with the win, but Charlie caught you guys back up, and once you were rid of Sunday, it was 1v1. So what were you thinking coming to the end? Did you think he was going to snipe you? Were you surprised you came away with it, or what was going through your head?
Yeah, I was definitely nervous. I was definitely going through those turns with my elbows out as wide as I could get them and trying to just keep those guys behind, because I felt like they were a little quicker. So I just tried to be as wide as I could and kind of cover the inside lines to make sure that they had to go around me. Other than that, they were both very fast.
You're up against a current reigning champion here in the sport class in Aaron Nations. Do you think this shows you can take the fight to him for the title this season?
Oh, I have no idea. We'll see. I usually I find a way to kind of screw a couple races up, so hopefully I'll keep my head on straight. We'll see.
Well, it's a good way to start it. Again, congratulations on the victory.
Thanks so much.
Gilles Estupinian taking the win here today, and hopefully solving the mystery of why Charlie Ferrer seemed to slow there. Justin's caught up with P2.
Well, Charlie, you came close to coming back from what happened during that battle for the race lead prior to the pit stops. Talk to us through what happened during that final stretch in the final lap. You had a great run coming out of the bus stop, and then it just seemed like the run died off. What happened there?
Yeah, he was smart protecting that inside race line, and typically even if you have a good run, it's really hard to, I feel, get to the outside and take the farther lane outside to get around. And I was hoping he would sort of push right a little bit or weave where I could tuck in, and it never happened. But yeah, we had a great race, a little rub it in the race. It was hard being out front a little bit, but yeah, can't say enough. It was a good race for the finish.
Of course, you had to recover, too, from that contact in the battle for the race lead. That initially with Elizondo in terms of that battle for the race lead. What did that car feel like after that contact? Because you did report on the radio that you had wheel damage, it seemed. And then we've seen the bobbles before the pit stop.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to save it. We were really close. I knew he was still trying to take the inside line, so I was trying to tighten up the race line coming into turn one. and that seemed to really hold him off well. But yeah, he got on the inside of me, and I tried to keep it tight, but you leave a little, an inch, they'll take a mile, so to speak, and that's what happened. And fortunately, I was able to save it. The comms came on saying that I had wheel damage, and I felt it a little bit halfway through the rest of that lap, and then I pushed it a little bit more, then I almost lost it in the bus stop. So that's when I was like, I need to go in to do the pits. So, but fortunately, it didn't take long at all to fix it. Fueled at the same time and got back out.
Now, with that being said, of course, a great performance here today. You really set the pace as well. We've seen with qualifying to get that pole to start off the day as well. Now, where do you see yourself now in the championship picture, knowing you were a part of that top 4 in that lead pack conversation this entire day?
Yeah, it's all about getting a good qual. And then, last season I had a few incidents where I'd have a bump with somebody else, my fault, for 2 races, and that sort of put me out of contention for last season. And I, hopefully we'll be in the top 4, top 5 for this season. I really want to move up to the next class and keep expanding this with PCA. It's been an amazing time with everybody. Just all the PCA members are amazing, so it's really cool doing the EDA with Chris and just the whole experience so far. So I'm super pumped for this season. I unfortunately won't make it for the next race. I'll be out of country, but I'll be back hopefully for race 3.
Well, Charlie, once again, congratulations on the podium finish. Well, strong raced run here today. You led the most laps with 18 as well.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys. Great job, and look forward to the next one.
Gary Ferrer coming away in the second spot tonight. Came close to the race win within 7/100ths of a second. That checker flag. Aaron Sunday is also standing alongside. But he's catching up with Joe Peak here after his bobble from the lead. Still a podium finish.
Indeed. Aaron, it seems like so close yet so far is kind of the phrase for today for you. You were in the lead for the briefest of moments there at the end. What happened coming off the corner?
Yeah, Joe, I was trying to get around Gil for a long time, and he's driving the widest Porsche I've ever seen, but I got it. So sorry about that, but I was just trying to push and I just lost the rear end there.
Other than that, you were also there in that top group when it came down to just you 4 and you guys had pulled away from the rest of the group. I assume you were like the others, just saying, okay, let's hold station, let's wait until the end to start fighting.
Yeah, I was gonna wait till the last couple laps, but stuff kept happening and cars were dropping out, so I just went for it towards the end.
You're also the one that's defending a title this time around. Do you feel extra pressure for that, or do you not even think about those things?
No, not thinking about it yet. Just trying to get through one race at a time here.
That makes sense to me. Well, regardless, it's still a good points haul with a 3rd place. Congratulations on a podium.
Thank you. I want to thank Playa Vista Insurance Services and OHND crew for all the race.
That was Aaron Sunday finishing P3 today here at Daytona. What a great start to Series 13. And of course, we're not done yet with it, because tomorrow night, January 16th, the challenge class will be the next up. Before that, or after we get to that, though, we'll head over to Algarve for January 29th for their Grand Prix circuit here in the challenge, or in the sport class, rather, off to Portugal for one of the newer tracks here on iRacing. A big thank you goes to the steering committee at PCA Sim Racing, as well as to our team tonight, Ramiro and Justin. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast of PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak, and until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.